I have some great cold intro material for you.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, you know how my chair's really squeaky?
Yes.
And I've been sitting on a stool up until this point. Well, the other day we went to my my uncle's, to help him move because he's moving house, or else we wouldn't have been helping him move. And he had some stuff to go to the charity shop, and one of them was a big exercise ball, and we got it, but we haven't been to the charity shop. And then I was like, oh, you know what, I want to blow up that exercise ball, and I was sitting on it. I was thinking, this is kind of fun. And I thought, I know what I can do. I can take it to my room. So now, instead of sitting on a lame stool, I am sat on a pink exercise ball. And the other thing that happened is, of course, that last time we were recording, I was really annoyed that my headphones were only playing out of the right ear, not the left ear. And it was bothering me to no end. And I thought, I could buy some headphones, or I could go into my sister's room, because as you know, she's in Australia. Go into my sister's room and see what she's got in terms of headphones, because I could just imagine they would be in the drawer that everybody has filled with wires. So I open that, and I see two headphones, one of which is these, like proper headset headphones that go over your ears, on top of your head, all that stuff. And they are also pink. So I'm looking very metrosexual. Okay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that, Michael. Unless, you think there's something wrong with it.
Yeah. I guess maybe you could say it's appropriating camp culture.
Camp culture.
Back up, chump, Biggie Smalls rips it quick and kicks it quick. You know how black niggas get. With the hood fatigues, with the boots with trees. Flipping trees, making crazy trees. Hitting buckshots at niggas that open spots on the avenue. Take my loot and I'm bagging. Pimping hoes that drive Bobos and rodeos. Flash the roll, make a wet in they pantyhose. Damn, a nigga style is unorthodox, grip the Glock. When I walk down the crowded block, just in case a nigga wanna act out, I just black out, blow the motherfucking back out. That's a real nigga for you.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out relatively recently at the cinema and see if they still hold up upon a second watch. I am your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are continuing our celebration of the Oscars, the most relevant movie industry awards show, by looking at the winners of last year, and we're going to be looking at the film that won Best Cinematography, which was of course Blade Runner 2049.
Yes, 2049.
Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Blade Runner 2049?
So, Blade Runner 2049. It's an American neo-noir science fiction film that came out in 2017, by the way, not in 2049, just to clear that up. Directed by Denis Villeneuve and written by Hampton Fancher.
Hamster?
No,
it was written by a hamster?
Hampton Fancher. That's a real name. Somebody is actually called Hampton Fancher. Wow. And it was also written by Michael Green. It is a sequel to the 1982 film Blade Runner.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. It stars Ryan Gosling, Harrison Ford, Ana de Armas, Sylvia Hoeks, Robin Wright, Mackenzie Davis, Carla Juri, Lenny James, Dave Bautista, and Jared Leto. It was released on October the 6th, 2017 in the United States, and it features a 163-minute runtime, which I don't often mention, but I feel because it's so big, it's kind of relevant.
That's what she said.
Yeah. The only one we've done longer was the Batman v Superman extended cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was also a neo-noir movie, was it not?
Yeah, in its own special way. It was pretty neo-noir.
And the budget, Michael.
The budget?
To guess that.
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously because the film was longer, because it was about 50% longer than most films, it must have cost 50% more than most films. I think that's the only logical approach to take. So I'm going to assume that this cost, I don't know, like, I feel like let's go for what, I really, like, I can hear it in my head. My head is saying 120 million, but I don't know why. I can't hear you, Luke.
Yeah,
I was just so shocked.
I was waiting for you.
You're waiting for me to confirm that it was 120 million.
Yes, I'm waiting. Well, I don't want to give you a clue.
Okay. I'm gonna. I mean, it seems like a lot in a way, but it's also where my heart really is. My heart is really telling me that, so I'm gonna go for 120 million.
Well, yeah, it's not that important, obviously. it's not life or death, but you're kind of close. The budget was 150 million to 185 million.
Okay, that's good because I was actually considering going lower. So
right, yeah.
glad that I listened to my heart. My heart maybe should have been more
Mhm.
contented.
How much did it make at the box office?
I don't think it made a massive amount. Let's go. I think it made 450 million.
Wow. That's hilarious.
I don't know if it was a lot more or a lot less. That's the worst thing. This is what I hate. It's when you're saying you're laughing, you're reacting like this, and I don't even know if you're going to tell me it made significantly less or significantly more.
Well, what do you think?
I mean, I guess probably it seems more likely it made significantly more.
Well, you're wrong on that one as well, Michael.
It made
it made significantly less. The thing is, what did you say before you said the 450 total? You said, I don't think you made a lot.
Yeah, well,
if this movie had made 450, people who made this, Warner Brothers, would be jumping for joy with that, because it only made 259 million.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
almost
nothing.
200. Yeah, almost 200 million off your guess, and probably, I don't know if so. It says budget 150 to 185, and obviously that means that maybe the 35 million extra was marketing. I don't know if that was the case, but if indeed it was, it did make a profit, because then it would be 259 to 185, so it would have made a decent profit, but still nowhere near probably what they were looking for.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was very disappointing for them.
Yeah, I know. Why do you think it didn't do as well? Because the original Blade Runner didn't do that well either.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, I guess, is maybe because the original... I mean, here's the thing. I don't really know exactly how famous Blade Runner is amongst people who aren't kind of weirdos, because it's not like Star Wars or even Aliens. I mean, I don't know how many people really, truly care about Blade Runner, apart from just, I don't know, I was going to say maybe some people know what it is, but I think there's even probably a lot of people just what? What are you talking about? Yeah, I mean, and as far as it was released in 82, and that was when I don't know, The Wrath of Khan was released, and
E.T.
Yeah, and Star Wars Episode 5. So it's a bit a bit of competition as far as sci-fi goes. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of surprising, but I guess also it was directed by. I feel like it was a bit of the guy who directed it was a very kind of indie dude. Well, not indie, yeah, kind of indie, very stylized. I think maybe that put people off. Maybe people watching the trailers and they were I mean, I haven't seen any trailers, but maybe the trailers were really slow and weird.
They weren't. That's the thing. They were the exact opposite of
were the trailers old 1990s trailers with some guy doing a voiceover in a world where replicants roam the world, one man must fight them. Ryan Gosling stars as an all-new action hero. Is that what it was like?
No, it was
that's why I didn't make any money.
It was like every other modern trailer.
Oh, well, you know what? I mean, speaking of that, I mean, maybe you're going to mention this at some point, but there was a bwam in this film.
Yeah, there was quite a few.
I didn't notice the bwam, so.
Yeah. The thing is, well, my theory is that, like you say, Blade Runner, it's kind of obscure. It's probably the most mainstream obscure movie.
Yeah.
It's not quite mainstream. It's still outside the mainstream, but it's as close to the mainstream as you can get. Hence
being in the mainstream.
Exactly, which is hence why you can get $150 million from Warner Brothers to remake this, and get Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford back. But again, it's niche. I'll say that. It's when it came out, nobody, obviously it only made 260 million. Nobody really cared about it, but it's still a decent amount considering it came out
it's like I always say, Luke. It's more money than we have.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's what we always need to judge films by.
Yeah, did it make more money than we have?
Yeah, did they make more money than we have?
Yeah, it was just interesting. I just go on the internet comments after. Watching various stuff about Blade Runner when it was first released, and people absolutely loved it. There were so many comments. It's best movie of the year. This movie is incredible, and it's it only makes 260 million at the box office. And it just shows to me how much a bubble the internet can be. the people that do comment on like the videos about Blade Runner or the articles about Blade Runner, how it's not really that big big compared to the rest of the public.
Yeah, especially China. I bet China didn't care, which is kind of weird because, let's be honest, China was a big part of this film.
Yeah,
you know, we've gone a really
wait, was China a big part of this film?
Well, there were a few like Chinese language things, like there was some billboards and stuff that had things.
Right.
I might be being non-Latin alphabet racist right now.
Yeah, it could be Japanese or Korean.
Yeah. Of course, we all know Japan has 3 different writing systems. They have one, which is they have 2, which are really, really confusing that there's 2 of them. Then they have another one, which is on top of their regular writing system, they have some Chinese words. So it's like they've got their own little writing system, and then on top of that, they've got every now and then there'll be the odd word that's just one symbol. And of course, the other thing is in China they have pinyin, which is how you sound things out with the Latin alphabet, and that was actually invented by Chairman Mao. I don't think that's like one of those North Korean things where it wasn't actually invented by Chairman Mao. I think he actually did invent it.
You know, you criticized me, Michael, from going off track.
Anyway,
not getting to be like, and then you just
sorry, Luke. It's just that when we decided to do a podcast on Oriental writing systems, I wasn't expecting to have to wait this long while you blathered on about some film you saw.
All right, Michael.
Anyway, speaking of some film you saw, did you like this film, Luke?
You know what, Michael? I don't know. I don't know if I liked it.
Okay, see, that's interesting because I did like this film. I thought this film was pretty darn good. I'll tell you what I realized, Luke. I was really productive and I did the one thing which I think people neglect to do, which is I cleaned up my desktop a bit. And when I say I cleaned it up a bit, I mean I began to clean it up, which is a gargantuan. That's it, not gargantuan. Gargantuan task. Because basically. You know when like you change computers and you basically just take every single document you have on that computer and you copy it over to the other computer, and eventually you end up with just this hodgepodge of just crap all over your computer. I was like, no, today's the day that I move some files around, and I didn't really achieve it. What I did manage to do was pretty much move all of my what's the word I'm looking for? All of my Excel documents to their own little folder, and now, Luke, I can't load up my film review plans, but I can tell you that I did enjoy this film.
Okay, good.
And I can understand you being a bit, not like, but like, what is this?
Well, the thing is, I've watched this movie twice, and
wow, it's very long.
I know, right? Well, to be fair, like watching this movie twice takes up like 6 hours.
Yeah.
No, like I'm really not sure whether I like it. And I really appreciate some aspects of it, like obviously the cinematography. And by the way, that's why we're doing this. I don't know if you mentioned it.
I did mention it, Luke, because I'm great at mentioning things.
It also won Best Visual Effects.
Yeah, I saw it won that too.
Yeah. It was nominated, I think, for Best Sound Editing. Yeah, Best Sound Editing as well, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Production Design, but didn't win any of those.
Yeah, was it nominated for Best Wow?
I'm looking. I don't think it was, no. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all of that said,
it wasn't nominated for. Oh, it wasn't nominated for Best Picture.
Yes. Actually, yes. I don't know. I mean,
I thought it would be.
Yeah, you'd think so. But anyway, what's more important than that is, do you have any nitpicks?
I have one nitpick.
Yes. Okay. I've got 5. I feel like it's one of those ones where I'm just writing hollow and down. You do your one first.
Okay, so my one is, why doesn't Love? Do you know which character that is, by the way?
Love is okay. I know she's one of like the women in charge. And there's a blonde woman in charge, and there's a brown-haired woman or black-haired woman in charge. Like one of them's working for Jared Leto.
Yeah, she's the one working for Jared Leto.
Okay, she's the one working for Jared. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I mean, what's the name of the one who isn't working for Jared Leto?
It's like Jollis or something like that. Jollis. I'll check. But yeah, basically, so she captures Harrison Ford, does Love, but then decides, you know what, I'm gonna leave this Ryan Gosling guy alive because he's like a replicant and he's very strong and he's a killing machine. I'm just gonna leave him alive. I'm not gonna bother killing him.
Yeah, that's my one.
Because it won't come back to bite me. It definitely won't.
Yeah, that is a very legitimate point, Luke. It is very strange that she did not even bother to murder Ryan Gosling.
Robin Wright, by the way, is Joshi. That's her name.
Joshi, yeah. And it kind of reminds me of like Super Mario, because I feel like there's a Super Mario. I mean, obviously, I'm not much of a Super Mario guy because I'm not a huge nerd, but I feel like there's a character in Super Mario called Yoshi.
Yeah. Oh, Yoshi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a little dragon, I think.
Oh yeah. And he works for the big dragon called Bowser.
Yeah. Or is he a frog?
That seems weird. I thought he had like I feel like he's a turtle frog because he's got a shell like a turtle.
Oh yeah, maybe he's a turtle. Yeah.
But then he's also got, I don't know, yeah, maybe he's some kind of mythical creature. So here are my five now four, and obviously, as is often the case, it's one of them's a joke. So it says "fuck off Skinner" on his door, and I was thinking,
Skinner.
Superintendent Chalmers must have
That's good. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, steamed hams, but it's Blade Runner 2049. Side note, I don't actually know what exactly Skinner is supposed to refer to.
It's like skin job.
Yeah.
So you're not actually
a real human being.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this skin around you isn't real. They've just put skin around a robot, basically.
It's a bit like in Terminator, when they have to be encased in organic material so that they can be sent back in time. Classic. Let's review Terminator. Anyway, okay, actually, this one's a really weird one. Because one of the reasons, like I mentioned at the start of this, and everything comes together in the end, I was able to find new headphones. The reason I had to find new headphones is because I could not hear what they were saying at first. And the thing is, even when I got new headphones, so at first I couldn't literally hear anything I was saying. Well, I could, but it was like everything I was saying seemed so unclear. And I put on headphones, and I was like, in a lot of the scenes, the audio seemed really echoey to the extent it was making it like, I mean, once I had my good headphones on, I could still tell it, but I was like, I'm not surprised that and I don't know if that was just me, but yeah, to me it seemed like the audio was really echoey.
It might have just been you. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. And then I've got another one. There's when he sees that number on the bones, that little date or whatever it was on the woman's bones, he zooms in on the bones and he says, "Look at that." My question is, how did he know there was a message there? How could he have possibly seen it? Because it was zoomed out completely, and it was like, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in again, keep zooming in, and then he zooms in like a million times further than, and like maybe he has super sight because he's a Blade Runner, but it was just very confusing to me because it seemed like it had to zoom in a lot before any evidence of the message became clear.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah,
that's all I can say.
He's so handsome. And then my final one is that, okay, it didn't really make sense to me why Mr. Orphanage guy needed to say that he didn't keep records. He said he didn't keep records that far back, and I feel like that's something that happens a lot in films. It's like, you know, this detective, he needs to know something, and for seemingly no reason, the person will be like, "Oh, we don't keep records that far back." Oh, you know, I don't know. They'll say they don't know, whatever else, and it almost seems like it's so unnecessary that you have to assume he's just lazy. You know, like there was no real like he seemed very like there was really no problem with him getting those records. There was no reason why he wouldn't need to get those records. But, you know, Ryan Gosling's like, "Hey, I need some records from your orphanage." He's like, "We don't keep records that far back."
Yeah, it seems like a pointless thing.
Yeah, and then Ryan Gosling's like, "Well, I'll have to fucking kill you then." And he's like, "Okay, sorry. I just didn't feel like going upstairs."
Yeah, he's like, "Do we have to? Like, it's a long way."
Yes.
Okay.
So now it's time we moved on to the plot. Do you think it's worth talking about the original Blade Runner?
You know what, Michael? I think it is. Let's talk about the original.
Okay, so I'm assuming it would be very weird to me if you didn't do this. But I assume that if you went to the effort of watching this film twice, you probably also either have recently seen Blade Runner enough to justify not doing this, or watch the original Blade Runner.
Well, I saw it about a year ago.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, kind of recently.
Yeah, and I guess first things first, I want to talk about the two thoughts I had on this film regarding the original film, which were, number one, when they have the intro, where it says, like, you know, it explains everything, which of course they do in the original Blade Runner, like the text that appears just goes do. And what I noticed was it was like basically just saying the same stuff, but it's saying that this is still happening. It was like, you know, so in the future there are rogues they're still called replicants. They're still being hunted down. The things that hunt them down are still called Blade Runners. I felt like it was using the word still a lot, and I was like, okay, we get it. You're basically just saying nothing's changed. And I was really thinking when I was watching, like, oh, it's going to be a soft reboot, because the amount that they were saying, like, oh, it's still the same thing, blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, so it's going to be a soft reboot. It's basically going to be, a very similar thing, but just with a new character set in the future. And then, gradually as the film unfolds, of course, you realize it's much more of a sequel. And I thought that was really interesting because, like we said, Blade Runner is not that much of a popular film. It's not a massive cultural landmark thing, except for other filmmakers. I think a lot of other filmmakers really like it. The average person doesn't really care. And I was kind of thinking like they would go for the old, you don't have to have seen the original film in order to enjoy this. And while I would say that's maybe true, I was kind of surprised at how much this film, reincorporated new characters and even, referenced old narratives and things like that. I don't know. Did you think about that at all?
Yeah, no. So when this movie came out the first time, I was like, oh, is it just going to be a reboot then of the original Blade Runner? But then they said Blade Runner 2049, so it's like I knew the original movie was set in like 2019 or whatever. So
yeah.
Okay,
this is set in this year. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So this is going to be something in the future then. So it's going to continue in that universe. But yeah, it was definitely more of a sequel. We'll get into that later. But yeah, it wasn't really a reboot. It was literally a sequel, just 35 years later.
Yeah,
it's a long time. But there you go. As for me, when just talking about the original Blade Runner, I'll say this: like, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before. Well, I know I hadn't seen anything like it before, and I'll probably never see anything like it again, because it was just like the experience was just incredible.
Yeah.
I don't think I would want to like watch it again. It's like, oh yeah, let's stick on Blade Runner, because it's such an emotive, or maybe not emotive. It's such an intense experience that you get sucked in, and it's not like you're not just watching a film. You're like immersed in this incredible world and this brand new experience. And I did enjoy watching it, but I don't know if I would watch it again. Basically, I did like the philosophical questions, like what does it mean to be human and all that. I enjoyed that, and obviously the cinematography was incredible, and the production design, and just this world which was created even for like 1982. It's just, I was struck by how good, it's still held up when I watched it just a year ago. And yeah, that was my experience of watching the original Blade Runner. I feel it's necessary to mention that because it is one of the most unique films that I've ever seen. And obviously a lot of people hold it in incredibly high regard. So what do you have to say about that?
I think that the original Blade Runner was... I kind of pretty much agree with like everything that you're saying about it being very emotional and like hard hitting. In that, it's kind of like, especially the fact that obviously you've got this bad guy, but at the same time he is very sympathetic. Like he's basically a slave who is trying to overcome this serious genetic defect that means that he'll die one day, and then you get the whole thing where like obviously, like you say, the existential question of whether or not, I guess, kind of whether or not what the main character is doing is right, and so whether or not the main character is actually a human being. And has kind of
that was added in afterwards.
Really. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I assume, because I think like this is the main thing that people watch nowadays. I'm assuming you probably watch the director's cut.
No, I believe I watched the original one.
Did you watch the one? So at the end, did they go to a like little off-world colony or something?
No, they didn't. No.
What happened at the end?
So from what I remember, at the end they were just driving in their car in like the forest.
Okay, yeah.
I believe I watched the original one because, and this is what was the only knock against it. I was listening to the version which had Harrison Ford narrating it.
Yeah.
So that is
That was
infamous.
a Cinema Sins narration moment. You said narration, and then it went ding. The sin count went ding.
Well,
Yeah.
it's infamous, that narration, because it is so bad, and it does kind of ruin like a really good movie. And Harrison Ford deliberately tried to do it as badly as possible so it wouldn't be put in the movie. So because he was afraid it would ruin it. And the worry was that the audience wouldn't get what was happening in the movie, so they needed Harrison Ford to like tell them. And it was just awful. Like the narration, like he sounded so insincere when he was doing it. And I just like after watching it, I was like, why the fuck did they have him narrate? That's such a bad idea. And then obviously I learned afterwards that it wasn't. He didn't want to do it, and in later cuts it was taken out. And I think obviously I don't know why that one in particular had it, but yeah, I would say that it definitely it's definitely better if you don't have him narrating it. It definitely makes the movie better.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Because I don't think I've seen the version with him narrating in it, but it sounds like it definitely would really hit the spot.
The worst part is after the what's he called, the blonde guy, like Hans Rutger.
Oh, goodness me.
The actor.
The actor for the I don't remember that either.
I think it's like Rutger something. Oh no, Rutger Hauer.
Oh yeah.
Rutger
I was going to say it's kind of a German sounding name, but maybe I don't know what German.
So Rutger Hauer, like he gives this lovely speech about
tears in the rain.
Tears in the rain and everything, and like he dies, and then like obviously Harrison Ford is just looking at him as he's dead, and then I'm just like, wow, what a beautiful moment. And then Harrison Ford comes in with his narration. It's like, I didn't know really what he meant by that, but it was certainly a beautiful moment. It's like, oh my god, that's just the worst thing you can do. It was awful.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the this clip.
I did want to say one other thing about kind of just a neat thing I noticed. So as we all remember, the classic shot in Blade Runner is right at the beginning when it looks at this massive cityscape, and it's like there's these flames coming up, there's these lights everywhere, and it just looks so awesome. And in this one, it has a massive shot out over desolate farmland. And I just thought that was obviously in a way it was kind of, there wasn't really that much. I suppose if I was being super, film student-y, you could say maybe it's because farmland is fertile, and this was about replicants giving birth to children. But let's just assume that wasn't the case. But either way, I thought it was kind of like a fun little different, or the same but different. Blade Runner has this massive thing looking out over this city as its opening shot. This film has a massive shot looking out over this farmland. And I was like, oh, good, well done for your little homage that I assume was probably a homage, but looks different enough that well done. So, but yeah, apart from that, the actual plot of the film. So there's basically, did you actually explain the plot?
No, I didn't.
Okay, because I'm actually kind of interested to hear how, I guess you just read Wikipedia, don't you, Luke? You're just a poser.
Yeah, I'm just a poser. So it's set 30 years after the first film. Gosling plays Kay, a Blade Runner who uncovers a secret that threatens to instigate a war between humans and replicants. Yes. So, and that secret basically is that a replicant, Rachel, has given birth to a child, and he has to discover that child and kill the child, because obviously Robin Wright's character, Joshi, is concerned that that could spark a war between humans and replicants. So he has to do that, and he thinks it might be him. He might be the child because of a memory he had when he was younger, but in fact, he's not the child. In fact, it's Harrison Ford. Sorry, it's not Harrison Ford who's the child. In fact, it's some person who makes memories that is the child, and Harrison Ford is her dad. So he goes to find Harrison Ford, and yeah, that's how he gets in the movie. And it ends by Kay reuniting Harrison Ford with his daughter. That's it.
There's one thing I was thinking about when I was watching this. I think one of the things that I saw a lot of people saying was that this film, one criticism I saw was a lot of people saying this film doesn't bring that much to the table that hasn't already been explored. And one of the things in particular I recognized from this narrative was a film called Children of Men, which is really simply summarized as some unexplained, presumably disease, afflicts humanity, and it stops. It makes the entire planet infertile. And the film is set about 25 years after this disease has afflicted humanity, and it's set in a world where there are no children because everybody is infertile. And basically, that's what I was thinking about in this film. So in that, what I should say is in Children of Men, there is a girl who does have a child, and obviously, seeing as she's had a child, all of these different government forces and religious forces and all that kind of stuff form around that to claim it for themselves, and that's where the conflict of the film comes from. And in a way, that's also where the conflict in this film comes from. The fact that there's a child in it shows that replicants are real human beings.
Real human beings, yes. So I think with the plot of the movie, just comparing it to the original Blade Runner for just a second, if you love this original Blade Runner, then you'll love this movie. I think that's an important thing to do with like sequels or reboots or whatever. It's hard to do with reboots because invariably you're changing some of the stuff that people loved the first time, because you can't just do like an exact copy with new actors, new visual effects. You're going to have to change parts of the story if you are doing a reboot. But with the sequel, it's like, okay, we've got to make sure we get what people loved about the first one and expand upon it. I think it does expand in a lot of areas. Like it does add stuff to the table. Like it expands upon replicants wanting to be treated like humans, that kind of thing. If you remember back to the first movie, that was kind of there. It was like Rutger Hauer's character was like, we were created. I can't explain. Like I said, it was a year since I've seen it, but he was kind of like, we want to just be treated normally. We were created. Why don't we have the right to live, etc. And that let's explore a bit more. Like you've got replicants now saying they're going to start a war against humanity, and so there's that. And there's also the thing from the first movie, which is replicants have memories from their youth. Sorry, not from their youth, but from their supposed youth, their fake youth. So these memories didn't actually exist. And they're putting these replicants to aid their mental stability or to make them feel like they are human. And so therefore, in this movie, that's explored some more. And it actually, what's really neat is it actually has something to do with the plot. Obviously, because it turns out the person who's creating these memories, I forget what she's called. I think she's called Anne.
Yeah. The daughter. Yeah. I think it starts with an A.
Yeah. Where is it? Dr. Anna Stelline. But yeah, so basically she's the designer of replicant memories, and she does have a role to play in the plot, a very important role to play in the plot. So yeah, things are added on, and they actually do have something to do with the movie, which is pretty cool. And so that's that. Do you have anything to say before I move on?
Yeah, okay. So I found, I guess I'll say first of all, I found the idea of the fact that replicants are just given memories when they're fully formed to be like a really interesting concept. And it comes back to an idea. As you know, Luke, I hate the Matrix. No, what's actually true is I think that the Matrix is very overrated, and my enduring criticism of the Matrix is that I think that it takes this really interesting philosophical concept and doesn't do enough with it. And one of the things that really interests me is this idea called Last Thursdayism. And Last Thursdayism is basically a philosophical idea that draws off something called solipsism. Solipsism is basically the idea that we can't know anything because our senses are unreliable. And Last Thursdayism says, what if we were created, the entire planet, the entire universe was created last Thursday? And with that, all of the historical evidence of past historical events and all of the dinosaur fossils and every single person's memories of anything that happened before last Thursday, including every single person's memories of, having watched the History Channel when they were a child, all of that was created last Thursday. And obviously that's just a really kind of mind-bending idea to think about.
Sounds like just creationists trying to get smart.
Yeah. That's something creationists say though. It's like, why couldn't God have created an old Earth, an Earth that looked old,
And they all speak like that as well.
Yeah, they do. Apart from, the funny thing is, the biggest creationist right now is an Australian called Ken Ham. Do you know Ken Ham?
I've heard that name, yeah.
Yeah, he's the person who built a life-size replica of Noah's Ark, but then he couldn't put it in the water because a wooden boat the size of Noah's Ark would actually bend and eventually inevitably break because of the structural limitations of wood. So
he himself.
Yes, he built a massive monument to disproving his deeply held core beliefs, which
That's beautiful.
Yeah, a bit unfortunate. And also, of course, it took him like 10 years to make it using like 1,000 workers and a massive. He got a big grant from Kentucky. Obviously, of course, it's Kentucky because he was like, oh yeah, all the creations will come and they'll flock there and you'll make loads of money. And apparently, it's been a bit of a disaster. So the important thing is that that idea of it being creating fully formed humans who have memories and things like that is just really interesting. And obviously they didn't really do anything with it, but they kind of didn't need to do anything with it because, I mean, they did enough with it, like you say. It did impact the plot. And that was good. I'm just trying to think I don't really have anything else to say building off of that, if you have anything else to say.
Well, yeah, obviously I said there's some elements of the plot I liked, but there are also there was an air of frustration, Michael.
Okay, I did actually just think of something else that would actually probably fit in now.
Okay,
So the fact that he finds out the orphanage place that he remembered was real was kind of like a cool moment in the film, because it was like obviously he had that memory and you're like, oh, that's a fake memory, and you're kind of interested in that concept of fake memories, and then obviously when he goes to the orphanage place and he sees that it's actually the place that he remembered in fake land. And you're like, oh, okay, that's cool, that's interesting. But apart from that, yeah, continue with your frustration, Luke.
Yeah. So, what did you say about the Matrix before? It's kind of like they had this really interesting concept,
yeah,
and they didn't do enough with it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what it was like with me. I think I was frustrated because I wished that the plot focused more on replicant uprising and the community of replicants. I think it would have been more interesting. Now that Seth the Morton guy from the beginning, like, he just dies. Like, if he had been like involved more somehow, I don't know, maybe in flashbacks, I'm not sure, but basically, like, his story sounds incredibly interesting. He was the one who, along with the other replicants, they witnessed the miracle, and it'd be interesting to see like this community. What their thoughts around this miracle are, and maybe like they say they're going to start an uprising against humanity. Obviously, that doesn't happen in this movie, and I doubt there's going to be a sequel. So you're not going to see that. But yeah, that's just a really interesting thing, which I think they kind of don't go into as much as I'd like them to. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, obviously that would be an obvious thing, and they kind of, I guess it's one of those things where it's sort of, I can't think of a good example. Oh, I'll tell you what's a good example of it. The end of 300, when at the end it's revealed that there's a massive army and they're going to take out the Persians, but then you don't actually see them take out the Persians because it's just implied. And I guess in this case the argument would be, well, it's implied that they do it, but obviously it would be more interesting, a bit more spectacle, to see at least a bit more fighting, or a bit more kind of or progress, a bit more narrative progress in terms of achieving that goal beyond just kicking the ball in motion by saving the child. And I agree with that. Yeah, I think it would have been good to see a bit more action, but also not just action. I mean, I don't want people to think not that we're philistines or anything, but also a bit more proactivity and things happening.
Yeah. So also, I think there's you find out right away there's a child that was born to a replicant.
Yeah.
And obviously in this world that's incredible. And then it's about Kay finding out how it happened. Then he thinks he's maybe the kid, and he's not. And it's not explained in an interesting way who that kid is, because that's the main point of the movie. And then he's suddenly like, oh wait, it was a she. Oh, so I'm not. It's not me. Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of like the tone that she uses is sort of dismissive. In that, like, he finds out that it's a she, not a he, and she's like, "Oh, you thought it was you," and it's just like she's just like, "Oh, Oh, you're an idiot, aren't you?
Well,
Dickhead.
it's not you. Like, it could have been, like, then it obviously cuts to who she actually is. And it's like, you know, you work out that, oh, it must have been, because she said she puts in some of her memories into the replicants. She must have put that memory into the replicant, into Kay. So then Kay thinks that, that must have been me who escaped. And it must have been me who was in this orphanage. But yeah, so she's not a main character really. She's in there for a scene and then she's gone. Be like, oh yeah, it'd be, you know, if she was a more significant character and you found out in an interesting way who the kid was who was born to a replicant, that would be good. In fact, right from the beginning, you know, when you see like the date written on the horse and the date written on the tree.
Yeah.
Like you see the date on the tree and it's like, wow, that's incredible. That's what Ryan Gosling's thinking. It's like, wow, that's incredible. That's the same numbers in the horse. But like, it'd be good if we somehow beforehand knew what number was on the horse, because then for us it would be like incredible. Because then it's just like, oh, so that's obviously something 6, 10, 21. Let's find out what that means. And you obviously find out that it's not that interesting.
Yes. This it was kind of like it almost didn't care about the twists it was laying down. It was just being like, hey, you know, here's all the stuff happening, but
here's a twist there, there's a twist there, you know.
A twist,
let's just try and not do it in a dramatic fashion. Let's just do it like organically, as perhaps it would happen, or a more realistic way it would happen. But then it's like, oh yeah, well, that's not that interesting really, it's not that entertaining. It's like, oh, okay, so he's not the kid of the replicant. Okay, well, there you go. Well, ain't that something? I think also another criticism, I think it'd be good if Kay felt like different, like if he changed his personality, if he was having like problems, or maybe he was like excited once he found out that he might be the kid of the replicant, because he has the same personality throughout the movie. Well, I was looking for like a change in like how he behaves, how he acts, and then like when he finds out like, oh, you're not actually the kid, he's like very depressed, or like you can see he's disappointed, but he doesn't change much. And maybe he talked with his girlfriend, his hologram of a girlfriend, about like everything I believed it was a lie, like something like that, dialogue like that, to show like he doesn't know what's happening to him. Am I human? And all the questions that brings. But he just stays the same stoic self throughout the movie.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's a bit where he has, so they've got this thing which is like a kind of, they're in, I guess when they come in from a mission, this was my take on it, when they come in from a mission, they have this thing where a computer says loads and loads of different words, and they have to repeat those words, and then also it says like these different kind of experiences and sensations and things like that, and then it's kind of like you either pass or you fail. And I was assuming that was kind of looking at their, I guess, obedience and also their
emotional stability.
Yeah, their emotional stability. And obviously he failed.
He does fail.
But then the problem is, so obviously in that sense it communicates in the strictest sense that he is just struggling with the information emotionally. But then the problem is, of course, that eventually you find out, that actually it doesn't seem like he's that distraught over it. And that's
like after he realizes the memory is real, like he screams or something, and then he just carries on being like his monotone self. Yeah. And then he goes into that testing thing, and he fails. But it's like, can we actually see it? Like can we see something? Maybe the film. Well, the filmmaker Dennis Villeneuve was like, nah, let's make it incredibly subtle.
Yeah, well, I don't know. See, here's the thing. Like, I have to find myself wondering just a tiny bit whether or not Ryan Gosling is that great of an actor. Because here's the thing. Like, in every single thing I've seen him in, basically his character is just very quiet, doesn't really say anything, is a loner. I mean, he's like that sort of in La La Land. He's like that in Drive. He's like that in that other film, A Place Beyond the Pines. He's like that in Blue Valentine. And those are just the Ryan Gosling films I can name off the top of my head. I can't think of a single one starring Ryan Gosling where he's like, happy, energetic. I mean, the closest he gets is when he's talking about jazz, and even then he's just like, "Whoa, jazz is really interesting. I love jazz." So yeah, basically, I think maybe it's the limitations of Ryan Gosling as an actor. I mean, maybe he really just can't actually act, and maybe everyone's just been tricked because they watch him and they're like, "Wow, such a stoic performance." But really, he's just sat there probably thinking about mac and cheese, something like that, not even paying attention.
Yeah, he plays a really good, like, depressed guy, does Ryan Gosling. Like a guy that's just done with the world.
Yeah, he plays a good, lovable loner. There's like a really funny thing with, so have you ever seen Drive? It's a bit of a cult classic. Okay. Basically, it's really popular with 4chan. And, like, one of the kind of running jokes on 4chan, is that a lot of 4chan people saw themselves as Drive, because obviously 4chan, as you can imagine, is filled with introverts, and antisocial people. And of course, Ryan Gosling in a lot of his films plays somebody who kind of appears to be introverted and antisocial. So what a lot of 4chan people will do is view themselves as like that. So instead of viewing themselves as a fat neckbeard complaining about women in their Star Wars films, they view themselves as a gruff introvert who just doesn't have time for other people. And
I think you told me about this.
Very interesting. Yeah, and that's so basically that's why everyone loves Ryan Gosling.
Back to, by the way, I was talking about Gosling in this movie not really showing his emotion. Like, in the original movie, obviously Rutger Hauer went on these like philosophical monologues about humanity and all of that, and I think that's why I probably enjoyed the original one more than this, because although this movie does build on a lot of the original points in that movie and is a really good sequel, it doesn't really deal with philosophical questions that much. I mean, it'd be really interesting if there was a deep conversation with Joshi and someone else. I don't know, maybe not Kay, because he's apparently boring, stoic, like we said. But like, what would a war between, or what if replicants found out they could reproduce? What would be the societal consequences of that? Like, that seems incredibly interesting to me, and obviously that goes with the replicant uprising, and they just kind of don't really want to ask. Well, they ask it a bit, like there's no Ryan Gosling asking him, what does it mean to be human? Like, am I human? I think the first movie was more philosophical. It's probably why I enjoy it more. And there was opportunities for this movie to be philosophical or more philosophical, but those opportunities I don't think were taken.
Yeah, I agree.
So you do, okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, let me think. Yeah, I mean, basically you're right. There were opportunities for this. I guess the only thing I think you could maybe say is that it wasn't trying, but that's obviously a very limited defense of the film. Yeah, I mean, it's just to say that wasn't their priority. And
if you weren't trying, then, that's why I prefer the other one. Cause
exactly, yeah. So, yeah. But I actually have another criticism that you haven't brought up, which is kind of, I only thought of it while you were talking, and it's a kind of glaring one, actually. So it brings me back to something which I always feel the need to discuss when talking about the original Blade Runner, maybe just because it's a pet peeve for me. Mm-hmm. And that is the character of Mr. Tyrell. And when I say pet peeve, I mean thing that makes me squeamish. I think we've mentioned this before on this podcast. The character of Mr. Tyrell, who, of course, gets his eyes gouged out in a very pleasant scene. And, of course, that is a very definitive end to that character, who is a bit of an interesting villain, and that he's obviously not really an active antagonist, but he is an antagonist nonetheless. And obviously, in this film, you have another character who is, again, not a massively active antagonist. He's more of a man behind the scenes, and that's, of course, Jared Leto. And he doesn't get an ending at all.
No.
And I only just thought, about that now, but it's kind of I don't know. I mean, the last thing you see him do, if I remember correctly, is he's talking to the Deckard, and he's saying, I'll take you to this place, and you will be tortured there, and then eventually you will reveal to me the identity of the child. And then he sends off Love. Is that her name? Love?
Yeah, L-E-V. What?
Yeah. he sends off Love with Deckard and some other random lackey, and obviously that's the last time we see him, if my memory serves me correctly. And some might say that's a bit of a limited.
A limited ending.
Yeah, limited ending for the character.
He was the big bad guy. Obviously, Love was just like an assistant to him. And you see her crying as well in various parts of the movie, showing that maybe she's a bit fragile. I don't know. She's not really
women.
She's not really that evil, I guess. But yeah, so with Jared Leto's character, he's just like, we're going to torture this person. Oh, my right-hand woman died and a bunch of my henchmen. Okay, I've got a lot of money. We'll just go after Harrison Ford again. We know who he is now. Yeah. We know what he looks like. We'll find him, right? Because I've got unlimited amounts of money. It's like, okay, the bad guy really isn't defeated. Like, Ryan Gosling, well done on rescuing Harrison Ford and getting him to his daughter, but still, Jared Leto's going to come for you. And it's like in 2 weeks' time, they could both be dead. I don't know. You're right. It doesn't seem like a final ending for Jared Leto in this film.
Yeah. When you think about it, it almost seems like you have to think that there must have been a plan for a sequel. Maybe. Or maybe it's like they're planning on, in 20 years' time or 30 years' time, I guess, somebody will, or 25 years' time, that's it, isn't it? 25, 82, 2017. Is that right?
35, Michael.
Yeah, 35. Jesus. Yeah. So in 35 years' time, maybe they're hoping somebody will pick up this film and they'll make a Blade Runner 2080 whatever, and or 2084? That seems right.
The original movie skipped forward 30 years.
That's true, yeah. So and then we'll have old Jared Leto, and then maybe then we'll get to see what happens to him.
Jared Leto reprises his role as that famous character.
Yeah, from Blade Runner.
Yeah,
I'd like to see. I hope this was in the same cinematic universe as Suicide Squad. Because when you think about it, again, here's my thoughts. This film is very much centered on the West Coast. Obviously, it takes place in Greater Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe on the East Coast, you've got Suicide Squad doing their thing in Midway City.
Mm-hmm. So what you could have had at the end, then I'm just thinking, is you could have potentially had Jared Leto and just not send Harrison Ford off to get tortured, and you could have him tortured here in his own complex. And so Harrison Ford rushes in, has a fight with Love, and then kills Jared Leto as well.
Yeah, I think you meant to say Ryan Gosling, not Harrison Ford.
Did I say Harrison Ford?
Yeah.
Okay, so he saves Harrison Ford, and he also kills Jared Leto, and because you don't really need why they go into another facility, like, it's not necessary. They could just torture him, like, in his own house or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of true when you think about it, because what he's like is he says, like, we have this facility off-world, where you'll learn the new meaning of pain, and you kind of have to think to yourself, hold on a minute, I feel like human beings have been torturing each other for centuries. I'm pretty sure we've got everything down now. Pretty sure we've got it sorted.
Yeah,
just you telling us how to torture people, Buster.
You just need literally some water and some
and a towel.
Cloth. Yeah, and then you can waterboard him.
Waterboarding isn't torture, Luke.
Wait, I thought the argument is waterboarding is torture, but torture's fine.
Yeah,
the argument in favor of waterboarding.
I thought the argument was, what if there was hear me out, guys. What if there was a bomb, and the bomb was going to go off, and the only way that you could get the detonation or the deactivation code for the bomb was to torture a child? I thought that was the big question.
That great hypothetical.
That thing that happens all the time. That's the real question. Anyway, just thinking plot. So basically, and I guess the other thing we should talk about is the fact that the film obviously just ends with Harrison Ford going to see his daughter, which was kind of okay, except for the fact that I feel like Harrison Ford was introduced a bit late, and then we didn't really see him do that much. So, obviously we saw him in the first film, but
that's the key. Like, he was in the first film, he was the main character in the first film. If this was just a standalone movie, it would not work.
Yeah, it would just seem like who's this bozo? Why do we care about his daughter?
So he banged a replicant, and all of a sudden he's important.
Yeah, you know what we should actually talk about? We should talk about the fact that so there's a really good YouTube channel called the Pop Culture Detective. It basically makes very obviously politically biased in the right direction, which is to say in the left direction.
Yeah.
Video essays. And one of the ones they talk about is kind of the tendency of Harrison Ford, especially in the 1980s, to star in films where he had varying degrees of respect for women's personal and agency.
Mm. Well, we'll get onto that later, Michael.
And, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I didn't tell you, actually, we've got a section on women.
Oh, good. Great. Love me some women. So, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll talk about that later. And apart from that, I guess there's not too much else. I suppose the only other thing that's worth mentioning about the plot, actually, I do have two other things to mention about the plot, but the first thing I want to mention is the idea of, like, using Blade Runners to kill other Blade Runners. It's very, very Terminator 2-y when you think about it. Mm-hmm. Where, of course, not Ryan Gosling, mm-hmm. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a reprogrammed Terminator, and he's sent back in time to fight other Terminators. Great, love it. So basically, what I'm saying is, they just stole that from Terminator 2, the old. Now the robot is designed to kill other robots. Mm-hmm. But it was, kind of interesting, obviously, because it has this idea of, like, he's betraying his own kind, but then in his mind, he says, like, a line about how he isn't betraying his own kind. Like, it's right at the beginning. Basically, what he says is pretty much amounts to, I'm not betraying my own kind because you're disloyal, and, my kind is loyal, and I'm loyal to people. So he's kind of just like, basically, he's a real bootlicker.
Yeah, no, he is.
He's a cuck to the system.
Yeah, so that's why it'd be interesting if perhaps he wasn't a bootlicker anymore, or thinking non-bootlicker thoughts.
Yeah, the other thing, actually, is that there was kind of a analogy made to, like, angels, and the idea that the rebellious Blade Runners were fallen angels, and I sort of felt like they could have done something a bit more with that, like maybe have the idea of, like, Blade Runners, are supposed to be perfect, and then some of them fail, and then that's, I don't know, like, that was kind of what I was thinking in my head. Like, I like the idea, one of the things that kind of, like, worked about the original Blade Runner is that the Tyrell guy was basically really obviously a kind of megalomaniac who had these really, great delusions of grandeur, and he watched all of the city on his from his massive palace, and it was a bit, and then obviously that kind of made him, not even necessarily a villain, but just like a godlike figure, and then obviously he gets taken down by his creation, and there's some symbolism there, but in this, one, there wasn't really anyone who, there was nobody who it made sense to me why they would want to create this race of servants apart from just money. So it's kind of like not as interesting. It's just like, oh yeah, I want money. And I guess that's when we have to address the really obvious point, which is why is it really, like, why is it profitable for him to have Blade Runners that produce children instead of just making more not Blade Runners. I keep confusing have replicants that make children rather than just making more replicants. I would think if I were him, I would just invest in making, replicant production technology cheaper rather than trying to produce women who can. I don't really know what his deal was with that. And again, it would make sense if he had some kind of, megalomaniacal thing going on where, let's say, he wanted to create something that could create life. Like he wanted to be God, and he was like, a good old Lex Luthor thing. Could have had a little God rant. We love those.
Well, he kind of did have a God rant.
What was his God rant?
No, he just went on various rants about stuff. Like it's like, oh yeah, he's got a God complex. That was pretty obvious.
Yes, but yeah, it just seemed not as interesting. And then finally, for some reason, this film made me think of the classic film AI. Have you ever seen AI?
I haven't. No.
Okay, basically it's Pinocchio, but science fiction. Famously, it was written by Stanley Kubrick, but then he died, and Steven Spielberg took over directing. And yeah, I think it's like quite parodied. It was actually parodied in the Simpsons Halloween episode, where basically a kid falls into a coma, and the family adopts a cyborg child to kind of fill the void. Then the kid comes out of a coma. The family gets rid of the cyborg child. They just abandon him in a forest. And basically, the cyborg child has this quest to discover that he is a real boy. And he is literally like Pinocchio. Like, there's this kind of hologram, and it's a blue fairy. which obviously is sensibly fairy, and Pinocchio turns him into a real boy. And I can't really remember how it ends, except for the fact that I remember it ends with him, like, I don't know, I feel like it ends with him cuddling up to some kind of mannequin because he thinks this is his mum. It's a very strange film.
Yeah, it is.
And that's when we get to, as far as I'm concerned, anything else to say about the plot?
No, I don't. What do you want to go on to next, by the way?
Well, I think it makes sense to me if we go on to your little woman thing, actually.
Well, I was going to talk about pacing.
Oh, pacing. Okay, yeah.
So I feel like that's very important with this movie.
Yeah, so this film was very long.
It was, Michael. And look, building tension is fine. I like it when films build tension. I generally do like slower films, like films that people would call like boring. But some of this wasn't building tension. It was not that. I don't have any idea what some of this was, what Denis Villeneuve was thinking. Like, this movie is 2.5. Sorry, it's longer than that. It's 2 hours and like 40 minutes long. The amount of time it wastes having Ryan Gosling just walk around, like, is shocking. Like, when he finds Harrison Ford, or the building Harrison Ford's living in, it literally like takes him 2 minutes, like 2 whole minutes, to just walk around and find him. And, like, there's no tension that builds. You know, it's quiet. You know, he's in this building. It's like, okay, if you just cut that down by like 3/4, we'll be good. You know, you don't really need to go that far. And there was various other times in the movie where I was like, Jesus, come on, just do something. You know, I'm fine with it being slow if the slowness adds to the movie. But I just felt like the slowness in this movie, in a lot of places, just was pointless and just added the runtime. And I guess you could say, hey, that's what the original Blade Runner was like. So this Blade Runner, you know, it's just doing the same. But
how long was the original Blade Runner? I have to ask. Since
I think it was about 2.5 hours. I'll check. Yeah, because I remember it being quite long, but not.
See, I don't remember the original Blade Runner feeling long, but
no, it didn't feel long. This movie felt long.
Yeah, this film kind of.
Yeah, it's only 117 minutes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Blade Runner, so that's literally like 2 hours long.
Yeah,
and this movie, like, it's slow paced, but it's long, and it doesn't, like, that combination is just really, really unnecessary, and like that's the thing where we just looked at the runtime, 117 minutes. It's not like the original Blade Runner was really long, and you know so the expectation was to make this really long. Like, it can be slow paced and that's fine, but you're just overdoing it. You're just doing it too much, and it really does make me think, right, come on, let's just get to the point. You know, and hey, maybe you could say I'm being too critical, and like people do like the slowness and just absorbing all the cinematography and the settings, which we'll get onto next.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be
the counter,
the defense that this is obviously like a very kind of neat experience, and I can kind of see that, I suppose.
But they do overdo it.
To me, actually, I think my opinion, which is obviously correct, because it's mine, would be that I found a lot of the scenes kind of when he's like just walking around the city, especially in just like boring buildings, and it's really slow. I found those to be really annoying. I think there were some moments where it was slow and I didn't really notice it because I was kind of just taking in, you know, the really neat scenery. Like, for example, I mean, nobody has a problem with a really slow drive over some incredible, you know, looking thing. But I think, there were some moments where it was just like in a building, in a room with a flat shot, nothing actually to appreciate, and it was still, you know, drawing out quite a lot. So I think those moments in particular were bad. But yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah. So obviously it's different, it's unique, and you know that it adds to the experience. I guess Denis Villeneuve was like, we've got to.
Yeah. I really can't believe you watched this film twice, to be honest, Luke. I mean, I know that obviously it's a good thing to do because it, but
not back to back.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, no, I did not watch. Jesus Christ!
I like the idea that you just finished it and you're like, oh, there wasn't enough film for me. I need to watch some more.
You need to watch it again. Yeah. So yeah, you know Mike from Red Letter Media.
Yeah.
He had a great joke that's like, this movie should be called Blade Running Time 2049 minutes, which I remembered.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, ain't that the truth? Like, I can appreciate what Denis Villeneuve was trying to do, but he overdid it. He definitely overdid it.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Maybe just like the original Blade Runner, there'll be all sorts of different cuts, and one of those cuts will be good. I mean, that's kind of the thing. I guess like everyone says Blade Runner's, you know, the original Blade Runner is great, but they're not really talking about the cinematic cut. I mean, I guess if you watch the cinematic cut and you thought it was pretty good, then the cinematic cut is obviously
Apart
pretty
from
good.
the narration.
Yeah, but I mean, I watched the director's cut and I thought that was really good. So you should watch the director's cut if you can, because I would say the director's cut. If you thought the theatrical cut was okay, then I think you probably think the director's cut was pretty damn good. But yeah, apart from that, that's
Cinematography, Michael. Next.
okay. Yeah, so
This movie won the Oscar, so it should be quite good, right?
yeah, and it was really good. So something I was thinking about when I was watching this. Are you familiar with the concept of hellscapes?
No.
Somewhat what it sounds like. So basically, obviously, you've got landscapes, which are scapes of land. Don't really know what escape is, but yeah. You've got escapes, which are escapes on the internet,
Mhm.
escapes. But hellscapes, basically, it's like any kind of very, I guess, dystopian looking like landscape, like fire, and it's all dark and murky and horrible. And like, I don't know, I've always loved that aesthetic. Like, sometimes I'll just look out at the car when I'm driving through, one of those places where everything's suddenly really horrible. Like every now and then, no. Like it has to be more kind of like empty. So that's the thing. You don't really get it in south of England or southeast England because there's everyone's too packed together. But sometimes we'll go kind of like up north and we'll see just like an old northern wasteland, like an old industrial area where there's like nothing happening there anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, that looks so cool. And you don't see that like down south. If there was like an old industrial wasteland, someone would come in and be like, "Oh, I'll build a $1 million house, a £1 million house here." But up north, people, there's so much space. Everyone is like, "Oh, just go build another industrial place," and you just leave these massive industrial wastelands. And I look out and I see it and I go, "Wow."
So what's your point, Michael, in relation to Blade Runner?
What I'm saying is that Blade Runner also looked a lot like that, and it looked cool.
Yeah, it did look cool. Look, I think literally right from the get-go, the cinematography is amazing. Like when he's walking through the fog, and like that dead tree next to the house.
Yeah,
like it's just amazing. It's gorgeous, stunning. It's even better than the first movie, which I guess you would expect, given it's 35 years later. The production design is incredible. Like, it's just the most gorgeous film ever. I don't know. Has there been one better? Like, it's just wonderful to watch.
Yeah, there was a Tree of Life is pretty good, but that's even more bizarre when it comes to plot. So the less said about Tree of Life, the better.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it won Best Cinematography, obviously,
Yeah.
at the Oscars, and that is.
You know what? We might have to do that thing. We might have to do that thing we do where we look up like the other things. I mean, I feel like it probably won't be any other ones. I could almost see maybe Dunkirk one was nominated for Best Cinematography. What were the Oscars again? I always forget. Was it the 90th?
Yes, the big 90th, 90th Academy Awards.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that Dunkirk was on.
Okay, I've got the list here. So we have Darkest Hour.
Oh, really? I wouldn't have.
Wow, that is just incredible. What was great about the cinematography in Darkest Hour, Michael?
Well, what it is that he dressed up like an old guy, and that means, and they had to film him dressed up as an old guy.
That shot of him sitting down with the king, that was something. To see how the light was like on him and the king because they were in the windows. Wow, fantastic.
You see how it was in focus?
Dunkirk.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mudbound.
We mentioned Mudbound last time. I think it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yeah, and
The Shape of Water, which we'll have to make a judgment on later.
Yes, we will.
I would say. And the other one was Best
Visual Effects.
Visual effects, and to be honest, I don't know. To be honest, I guess the weird thing about visual effects is that I don't know, because obviously the weird thing about visual effects is that sometimes you have to know behind the scenes in order to know whether or not something had good visual effects. Like, for example, sometimes you'll find out that a film had really good visual effects, and you might not even know because it's so seamless. I mean, that's the problem with true good visual effects. The best visual effects are the effects you don't even notice are there.
Yeah, so the other
Kong Skull Island
movies, Kong Skull Island, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Star Wars, and Wolf, the Planet of the Apes are there.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like just once they should give Andy Serkis. Just have, how they usually nominate films, best visual effects, films. I think just once they should nominate just Andy Serkis for best visual effects, because like I don't know if he's ever won an Oscar, but looking at like War for the Planet of the Apes, he's played just so many CGI things, and he just hasn't got any recognition. So I think that
I think he has got recognition.
I don't know if he's got. I mean, I don't know if he's won an Oscar, but I feel like he hasn't.
I know, but Amy Adams hasn't. She might do this year, but she's still considered one of the best actresses.
Yeah, that's true. It's because she starred in Batman v Superman, so now she's not allowed to ever get an Oscar.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, once you starred in one bad film. But yeah, so basically, I think, yeah, the cinematography, there's just, I mean, it's very orange. We acknowledge that about the film. It's a very orange film.
Just like in Justice League at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which was better visually, this movie or Justice League?
Oh, that's going to be hard. Yeah. Oh, Justice League. What a terrible film.
Yeah.
Film. Yeah, this film, it just looked real good. I mean, I suppose it looked as good as the original. But then you give the original credit for, being made back before computers.
Okay, I think we should discuss the social commentary of this movie, Michael.
The women?
Yes, the women. So this is something I thought might get brought up. The thing is, it's a dystopian science fiction universe, and a lot of the fans of these kind of films are probably like 40-year-old men with beards or 20-year-old men who are trying to get beards. So yeah, there's not a lot of consideration, I think, amongst the people who went to see Blade Runner or the fans of Blade Runner on how it treats women. But anyway, we'll get into it. So reviewing for the film for Vice, Charlotte Gush was critical of its portrayal of women, who said they were either prostitutes, holographic housewives, or victims dying of brutal deaths. While she acknowledged that misogyny was part of the dystopia in Scott's 1982 original, she stated the sequel was eye-gougingly sexist. Anna Smith, right?
Eye-gougingly.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it? Anna Smith expressed similar concern, stating that sexualized images of women dominate the stunning futuristic cityscapes, and questioned whether the film catered heavily to heterosexual men. Yes, it did. Richard Keynes of Movie Pilot countered that the gender politics in Blade Runner 2049 are intentional. The movie is about secondary citizens, replicants, orphans, women, slaves. Just by depicting these secondary citizens in subjugation doesn't mean that it is supportive of these depictions. They are a condemnation. So there you go. What do you think, Michael? Which side are you on?
So it's something that is often applied to fantasy. So George R.R. Martin, I feel like I speak about this show a lot, but you know what we're talking about, of course. Game of Thrones. A lot of people said that they don't like they criticize Game of Thrones for its sexist depiction of women. And of course, one of the problems of that is that George R.R. Martin counted as well. The medieval past was sexist, and obviously that's a pretty good defense. But then I suppose you could also make the argument for the future. You could say, well, and of course the thing is, in some sense, there's nothing like, it would be a bit like saying The Handmaid's Tale is sexist because only shows women in. To be honest, I haven't seen Handmaid's Tale, but like I'm saying, like
the women are subjugated, but that's the whole point of the
exactly.
show.
I suppose So the problem. I was going to say your problem, but the problem with people in general, I guess, would be that it's it's like, oh, they just happen to be oppressed. And I suppose and it's not really addressed. I think it wasn't really something that I noticed in this film, and that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't a problem, because it is entirely possible that I may not have noticed something that was a problem. I know it's hard to imagine.
Sorry, it was just like the hookers and the naked women,
So you're saying it was a lot like playing Grand Theft Auto? Yeah,
essentially. Yeah.
I especially didn't like the bit where Ryan Gosling picked up a hooker, and then when she got out of the car, he ran her over. And then when the police came over, he shot them with a bazooka. That was in very poor taste.
Okay.
I mean, what do you think?
So, I don't know, Michael. I don't know, because you're right, like saying, okay, yes, this is what the society is meant to be. The society is meant to be sexist. The society is meant to be one you are not meant to want to live in. So it's unsurprising that women are treated poorly. But then it's like, imagine if you were just like creating your own sci-fi. And it's like, oh, it's set in the year 2092. And oh yes, all the women walk around naked because that's what the society says.
Yeah.
It's not me, guys. It's just the society because they're...
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, right. Let's, it's it's that balance. Denis Villeneuve, by the way, he said he's very sensitive about his portrayal of women, and says Blade Runner is not about tomorrow, it's about today. And I'm sorry, but the world is not kind to women. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, like, yeah, basically, it is kind of weird that it isn't explored. But I think, are we going to talk about? Because this is what I wanted to talk about: the fact that, I mean, like I already said, the bad depiction of women in the original Blade Runner. Because I think that's kind of relevant, because obviously you can make the argument that it was just following on from that. Although the thing with the original Blade Runner is that Harrison Ford basically is just kind of a bit... well, he's a bit of a rapist, isn't he, Luke? That has to be said.
Yeah, he is. And obviously that is something that is a stain on that movie, and it does not age well. Yeah. And obviously, I suppose... Although I'm looking at these quotes and nothing about Harrison Ford is mentioned, but perhaps one of the reasons why people are so keen to point out how misogynist it is because of what happened in the 1982 version, and how, I guess, that's the thing, that in that version, nobody talks about that scene, really.
Yeah.
In evaluating it. And I imagine if you were a young woman going to see this movie, you'd be like, hey, what? Nobody cares then about like these hookers just walking the street and that giant naked woman just there. Like nobody gives a shit about that. And then you become perhaps frustrated that people are just talking about the cinematography and not about like these things. Like I'm just looking here, like Donald Clark, the Irish Times indicated that female audiences seemed alienated from it. Just 8% of its audiences were females under 25.
Yeah, I suppose actually now I think about it, one of the because I was like, I didn't really notice the negative depiction of women. I suppose that's the big problem with the kind of it's a dystopia defense is that I didn't notice it until you pointed it out. So in that perspective, it didn't really work because obviously if it was a good dystopian idea, it would have been saying look at the way it depicts women, isn't that terrible? And I, as an astute film observer person, would go, oh yeah, it is. But instead, I hadn't. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about it.
Well, here's a twist, by the way, Michael. Helen Lewis of the New Statesman suggests that the film is an uneasy feminist parable about controlling the means of production, and that its villain, Neadir Wallace, is consumed by rage because because a woman can do something that he cannot.
That seems like not a bad interpretation. I feel like that's a classic example of like a good idea that the filmmaker himself didn't have. Like that's a clever idea. And would have been an interesting thing for the film to actually explore. And I think that would be really interesting if I've forgotten his name, Jared Leto, like I say, was upset that he couldn't produce Life, and that turned into some kind of sexism. That would be really interesting.
Is it the curtains were blue, so the character was upset? That kind of thing.
Pathetic fallacy.
Is that the non-layman's term?
Yeah, I think so. So you mean like basically the visuals being?
Well, yeah. I just took it from like a joke or a meme or whatever. Like the English teacher says, the author. So the character.
I get you. So I get what you're saying. So you're saying it's like it's over analyzing kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Over analyzing. Okay. The curtain is blue because it symbolizes how sad the character is. In reality, just the curtains just happens to be blue. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Although I think in that case it's probably like she's trying to find meaning in it, and probably I guess she is implying that he is actually putting the meaning into it. So yeah, that's a good point.
She says like uneasy, so perhaps like she recognizes that it's like it could be at a stretch. It's a stretch, but maybe. Anyway, do you want to wrap up? Or do you got something else to say? Or do you want to talk about the characters?
You know what? Yeah, I suppose actually, even though it is, this has been a reasonably long one, but let's just think. Okay, so I feel like we said quite a bit about Ryan Gosling. Basically, that he is very, very stoic, and therefore it's kind of hard to really discern much of a character from him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess actually something we should say is that Harrison Ford does not seem like he completely hates acting. in this film. It
No.
seems like he didn't absolutely want to murder the person who asked him to be in this film, and I think he needs a round of applause for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair play to him for actually, acting.
Yeah, doing his job
Mhm.
that he's paid millions of dollars to do.
Yeah.
The hero.
You got Joy as well, Anna de Armas. That was the hologram girlfriend of Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Have you seen the film Her? See, this is, how I was saying that this film reminds me of a lot of other sci-fi films and borrows a lot from other sci-fi films. That's why I know I always reference other films. I know that's the thing that I do. But
I haven't seen Her, but I do know about it. And I was just looking in the Wikipedia page, and there was another reference to Her, which I saw.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it. Anyway, tell me about that.
Basically, Her is a really good film, but the gist of it is that a guy has they introduce artificially intelligent operating systems, and a man falls in love with his artificially intelligent operating system. And obviously, the fact that this guy has a artificially intelligent operating system in his house, represented by a hologram, is reminiscent of that. So that's basically it.
Yeah, no, because I did see some reference. I'm just trying to find it here because it is quite interesting. Yes, so Esquire magazine commented on the controversial aspects of the sex scene, calling it a robo-menage a trois.
Sorry, Luke, I'm going to have to teach you how to pronounce something there. It's menage a trois.
That's it. I thought it sounded wrong. Menage a trois. And compared it to the sex scene between Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson in Her.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things that happens in Her is that, in fact, it's pretty much the exact same thing, and it's kind of so basically, Scarlett Johansson can't have sex with Joaquin Phoenix because they're actors being played together on the same film, and it would create a conflict of interest if they had sex. Because she's obviously artificial intelligence, so she basically gets a surrogate in, and these surrogates have sex. She's not quite a hooker. It's actually an interesting aspect of the world building, where because in Her, lots of people are in romantic relationships with artificially intelligent computer programs. There's an entire industry of people who basically provide that service, which is quite entertaining. But yeah,
fair enough.
So there is a massive similarity.
Okay, do you want to sum up?
Yeah. Okay. I'll go first. I don't usually go first, but I've been doing it more. So basically, one of the things I think is worth talking about is that we're in an Oscar season, and one of the things we were kind of saying is once we're in Oscar season, our top films will be being heavily populated. And to be honest, it's not really been totally like that so far. Darkest Hour was a bit disappointing. So was the other one we did, Call Me By Your Name. Coco was good, and the Lego Movie was good, but we didn't even review that for Oscar film. So we've kind of been looking for that really good Oscar film, that Oscar film that would show that we're in Oscar season, we're looking at films that won Oscars, and therefore we're going to get some really good quality films. And I really wanted this film to be that. I really wanted this film to be the next great Oscar film. And in some ways, I think it did a pretty good job. But I don't think it did quite as much of a good job as I wanted it to. Having said that, so obviously the limitations, I think, can broadly be summed up as, there wasn't much going on with the idea of a replicant rebellion. There wasn't much going on with the idea of Ryan Gosling as some kind of challenged, troubled person, because he just kind of played a stoic person, didn't really react to anything. There wasn't much going on with Jared Leto and what his motivation was, and his comeuppance or anything like that. The film just ends without him being dealt with at all. And then finally, there a lot of philosophical concepts which kind of felt like they weren't explored as much as they could be. And none of those things seem particularly good. Having said that, despite none of those things being very good, all being bad things, this film still had an interesting plot. It still was kind of interesting to watch Ryan Gosling go around and find out this story, even if it was filled with all sorts of places where they could have explored more. So it's not as if this film is some kind of plotless nothingness. And then, of course, the one thing that this film won according to, and the one thing where it definitely excels, is cinematography. And it's a really, really cinematic film, and I think you have to give it credit for that. And with that said, I'm going to do something maybe a bit controversial, I think, especially with you, Luke. Mostly because this film is at the top of your list, and there we go, it's giving it away. And yet it is actually slowly moving down my list. It's a 9 out of 10, but it's actually the bottom of my 9 out of 10s now. And I'm going to put this film, I'm going to put it above Get Out, and that's just because.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just because.
No, I don't care.
It's kind of the cinematography and the art, and I think basically. I suppose it should be mentioned this film was really long, but if you watch the original Blade Runner, which you should, and I think you should probably watch the director's cut, then you're going to have a great time watching the original Blade Runner. You watch this film, it won't be as good, but it will still be really nice looking, and you can watch it once and never watch it again. But it will still. I suppose the one thing that probably should be said is if you are watching this, I don't know, don't watch it in 360p. I don't know if 360p still exists, but probably don't do that.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
Don't necessarily need to watch it on an ultra widescreen Super HD TV, but I'd say at least 1080p is what you're going to be wanting to shoot for if you're watching this film. But I'm putting it below Grand Budapest Hotel because, let's be honest, Grand Budapest Hotel was similarly visually nice, even if not quite visually stunning. It was technically brilliant, and Grand Budapest Hotel was a slightly more fun film to watch, all things considered. And that's my review. So it's actually a 9 out of 10 above Get Out.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're going to rate this higher than
yeah.
I am.
I thought that might be the case from the beginning.
Yeah, so I started off by saying I don't know if I like this movie. And the reason why is because there was just so much frustration. Like, there was, I think, one, because of the runtime and just the amount of just walking around that Ryan Gosling does that could be cut. That's one thing. Like I said, Denis Villeneuve overdoes it with the slow pacing. It doesn't need to be that slow. And also because of the lackluster plot. They could have done more with the Replicant Rebellion. They could ask more philosophical questions as well. They could have done some more stuff with that. Having said, all that, I think it's, as sequels go, it's a really good one because, if you love the first one, you're probably going to love this one as well, and it does build on the first one. And as somebody who isn't, like I said, I'm not really the biggest fan of the first one, so I probably wouldn't be as big a fan as this one. But I can appreciate if you really do like the original Blade Runner, you'll really like this movie as well. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna give this. Oh yeah, and obviously the cinematography is incredible. It's, if you can see it, try and see it on the biggest screen possible. It's it's really incredible. I'm gonna go and give it an 8 out of 10. I think that's a fair thing for me. And like I said, this could have been a 9. I was thinking when it started off, I was really into it, and I was with the first scene with him and what's he called, the guy who plays Sapper Morton, Dave Bautista, Ryan Gosling.
Yeah,
you remember that scene?
Yeah, at the beginning.
Throws him through the wall.
Right, right. At the beginning.
At the beginning, and then I was like, wow, I'm going to really enjoy this movie. This is going to be one for the ages.
Yeah, sadly, I do admit it started off looking really good, and then
start off looking really good for me. So that's why it was just frustrating. And I did look, actually, there might be a sequel, so that might expand upon this movie and address some of the issues. There's also the issue of Jared Leto not dying, which he brought up as well. So yeah, it's going to be an 8 out of 10 for me. What are we doing next week then?
Oh yes, next week we are doing, I should know, are we doing 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri?
3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Yes, we are.
Yes, I just wanted to double check. And I'll tell you what we haven't actually acknowledged yet, I don't think, which is the fact that we're recording these quite a bit in advance. And therefore, I'm kind of hoping nothing major happens. Otherwise people are going to think, all the people who watch us are going to think that our cold opens are just not on the ball. People are like, why are they talking about, this guy's bouncy ball that he sat on? Why aren't they talking about the fact that Donald Trump had just started a civil war? So let's just hope that doesn't happen. Yeah,
within the next month. Let's hope that. After that, he can do that, and that'll be fine because we can talk about it then.
Yes. Okay. But until then,
Until then, we have been selecting and reflecting on Blade Runner because it won Best Visual Effects and Cinematography the Oscars last year. Join us next week when we will be selecting and reflecting on 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, because it won Best Actress, I believe, with Frances McDormand, and also Best Supporting Actor for Sam Rockwell. Anyway, join us next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I forgot to say who have you been. You've been Michael, right?
Oh, yeah, I've been Michael.
Yeah. And I've been Luke. Goodbye.